Hey guys, it's your host, Bailey Cartwright. Welcome to the Stronger Scars podcast, where I invite others to dive deep into the ups and downs of physical and mental scars. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Stronger Scars podcast. I'm Bailey, your host, and I took a week off for Easter. I went home back to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, spent some time with my family, and now I'm back. I'm joined today with Kenzie Grenell, who has been on the podcast before, my best friend in the world, and has a lot of good insight. So Kenzie, say hello.
Hello. This is my third time on the podcast. Today, I kind of just wanted to talk about my experience from a physical therapy student perspective. For those of you who don't know, I am a second-year physical therapy student at Kenzie University. Currently a retired athlete, so I was injured, was on the podcast before. So yeah, here we are.
So one of the things that me and Kenzie talk a lot about is the really weird transition from playing a sport your entire life, playing a sport 7 days a week your entire life, and then it going cold turkey and you're completely done. So we want to, of course, Kenzie's going to give her input on the physical therapy side of things, but we want to talk about identity in athletes in general, just because it's something we've both gone through. So before we talk about Kenzie's perspective, I felt this was a time to give an announcement of something that I've been keeping quiet about for a few months now, that has been in the works, has been a really hard decision, but I am going back to grad school and I'm going to be playing soccer again. I'm playing at a school called Brandeis University in Boston. It's a D3 university, and I'm really excited. I think one of the things that I struggled with from, being done with soccer is that I never got a proper goodbye. And I want to talk to Kenzie about like the proper goodbye later on in the episode. But that was something that I really struggled with. And when my identity, when it was all said and done, I wasn't ready to give up soccer. I felt like a big part of me was missing. And with injuries, you kind of get a foreshadowing of what that's going to look like. So I was prepared, you could say, in a way for that goodbye, but I never got a fair chance, to play, whether that was from my injury, from other external factors. I didn't get a fair chance. So I'm excited to go back to play again. I've already met the team. They're very great. The coach, shout out Mary, I'm sure you're listening. Literally is probably one of the only reasons I'm going back and playing soccer. One of the most respectable people I've ever met in my life. I appreciate everything she's done for me. So yeah, we can talk more about this later, but I wanted to give the big announcement at the beginning because I've told some people, and I think for someone who's gone through an injury, if you've gone through an injury and you've had to medically retire or something, hearing somebody else who went through an injury is going back and getting to have that finale of their sport, I think is really exciting to hear. So I'm hoping you guys are as excited as I am for this, but we shall see.
I am so freaking proud of you. I'm so excited to watch you play and, like you said, get that proper goodbye from the sport, or just a fair chance, as you put it. I'm really excited for you. I think you're going to do great things there. But I wanted you to maybe expand a little bit more on what that process was like for you and kind of how you made that connection with Brandeis, because I think that was also very interesting, if that's something that you want to share with the listeners.
Yeah, I think it's something that's weird because, so I'm going to tell you guys how I first got in, and some of you might be that's weird, but to be honest, I'm a firm believer that things happen for a reason. And this was honestly a decision I had to follow my heart because, so let's walk back. So me and Nick moved. Nick is my husband, for those of you who don't know. We moved to Boston because I was doing a sports psychology program at Boston University. During that, we were all assigned a few teams who we work with as an intern sports psychologist. And one of my teams was Brandeis women's soccer. So I was their intern sports psych for a few weeks, did some sessions with them, had one of the best sessions I think ever of sports psychology with them. It was amazing. And I was not enjoying my time in my program. I didn't feel like my goals as what I want to do, how I want to help people were going to be achieved by continuing the sports psychology field. So I made a really hard decision to drop out of that program. And I talked to the coach at Brandeis and I was just messing around with her. And I was like, what if I come here? And she was like, are you serious? And I was like, I don't think so, but I don't know. And things just progressed. And the more I talked, we had to make sure I got my NCAA eligibility. And there's some weird roles from transferring from D1 to D3. But it all worked out, and I'm going to be doing an MBA 2-year program. And yeah, we'll see. I have 1 year of eligibility right now, working on getting my 2nd year. So we'll see where that kind of takes us. But yeah, I think too, like, I'm so excited to see the difference between D1 and D3.
Yeah, for sure. I just remember when you called me to tell me that you weren't really liking Boston, and then you were kind of playing around with the idea of like transferring schools, playing soccer again. But like you said, it was a really tough decision for you because that meant like you would have to take almost an entire year off.
Right.
So I think that it says a lot about your character to follow your heart. As soon as you called me, I feel like I knew in my heart like that was the path that you were going to take. Like, just obviously by being like your best friend and listening to the podcast, I've seen how much you have grown as a person. And even for you to just come on and to talk about your story and talk about how, yeah, like you dropped out of a program, but like understanding that was a really hard time in your life, but it's okay. And
right.
Everything happens for a reason. So I definitely commend you on that.
Well, I appreciate that. And like, I think I've talked about this before, but growing up as an athlete, like the decision to quit the Boston program was so hard because I was taught that quitting is wrong and like giving up is wrong, but it was what was best for me. And, like sometimes like I think God presents you with these decisions that you have to make for yourself. And at some point you have to be like, okay, this is definitely what I'm supposed to do. And that was kind of one of those moments for me, but like, it's going to be weird. It's going to be, I'm a 23-year-old married girl. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I met with the team 2 weeks ago and I was like, I hope this isn't weird for you guys. Like, I'm older, like I'm married, I have a husband. And they were super cool about it. And at the end of the day, like, I don't know, I'm just really excited. And I want this to be an example for people. Like, honestly, like, so I'll share this with you guys. A few weeks ago, me and Nick were doing a really hard leg workout, and I haven't done legs. Like, I would just walk on the treadmill. That was like kind of my leg workout because I didn't want to freak my legs out. But we did a really hard leg workout, and we were fighting because Nick was like, you need to push yourself, you need to push yourself. And I was just sobbing because, it's hard to get back into things. It's not easy. And I was just upset and I was mad. And he was like, what is wrong? And I was like, this isn't going to be easy. I understand this isn't going to be easy. And like, I'm going to give it 110% for myself. Yes. But I want to show other people that like, if something tries to knock you down, if something tells you you can't do it, my legs told me I couldn't do it. I didn't get to finish playing soccer how I wanted to. I'm doing this for people who feel like they don't have that opportunity. Whatever in your life seems like it's a mountain, you can climb it. That's kind of why, like, I will always push myself to a different level because it's not about just me anymore. It's about all of you guys who have injuries, who have mental health, barriers. You feel like you can't do something. There's always a way to do it if you really put your mind to it.
Preach.
And I also feel like another thing I was nervous about, like this whole decision and telling people, was people who are going to be like, your legs, what about your legs? You have so many leg problems. You're just going to get leg problems again. And it's not going to be easy. I understand that. I'm going to manage my body differently. I feel like I have such a good relationship with this coach already that I'm going to be able to manage it. And I'm going to pay more attention to the rehab and making sure after I'm pushing my body, I'm recovering my body, things that I don't think I did properly at my time at Notre Dame, just kind of paying attention to those little pieces. So my legs will be fine. So if you have concern for me, I appreciate it, but I know that I could do this. So with that, let's slide in a little bit to identity. One of the reasons, like I said previously, that I'm making this decision to go back and play is 100% that I didn't know who the hell I was after playing soccer and then not playing. And, I came to Boston, had no friends, don't talk to people. Me and Nick do our thing. That's it. And I think that identity as an athlete helps you make friends. It helps you have an outlet to leave your house and go do something. So that was a huge reason why I wanted to play again. So I also think that this is like, identity is one of the most common issues athletes face after playing a sport, 100%. Whether it's an injury knocks you out from playing or your time's just up, it's one of the biggest things that we deal with.
But yeah, so just a little bit about my experience. So I think I talked about this a little bit in the last episode that I was in, but basically graduated from Mercyhurst. I graduated a year early, so I did a 3+3 program with Mercyhurst and Gannon. And at the time, Gannon offered me a scholarship to play soccer in grad school while in PT school. And after a lot of consideration, I decided literally like the week before preseason started not to play. So I just remember like my last game ever as a collegiate athlete, it didn't feel real. Like I told myself like there's more
right
after this. Because I had every intention on playing at Gannon. And then after I talked to a lot of professors in my program, the head of the program, like previous students, current students, I just decided at that time it was best for me not to play. And looking back, I am very glad that I made that decision because I struggled a lot during my first semester of PT school.
A lot for you.
There's no way I could have done it. Yeah. Like no, like I said, I struggled a lot during my first semester, and adding soccer on top of that, I would have just been setting myself up for failure. Yeah. But with that being said, what I touched on prior to this is just that, like, no one prepares you for the time that you walk into class of like 50 people, not knowing a single person, and like you have to make friends. Yep. Like in undergrad, like I was in class with soccer players, like in every single class, like there was always a soccer player. Mercyhurst wasn't that big of a school. It was really small. But like everything we did, like even going to the cafeteria, there was always like, you just look for the soccer girls and you sit with them. Or if you're going to the gym, you just grab your teammate and you go. Like no one prepares you for what that's like. And I think it's just really important to talk about and bring up, because I think, like you said, identity is huge. Just this identity crisis that athletes face after they retire from a sport for whatever reason, whether that they graduate or they have an injury.
Right. Yeah, I think, and like I contemplate, like, should there be a way to prepare athletes for it? And I'm like, maybe not. Maybe it's something they need to do on their own. But like, no, I think that there's definitely ways to prevent this crisis that we feel whenever it's taken from us, whether that's just like, doing a trial run while they're in season, like not while they're in season, but like while they're still an athlete, give them a trial run, say, hey, like for a week, you need to go do this or do something else other than just go to practice. And in one of my episodes, I was talking about like confidence. One of the hardest things to do is do something new that you're not comfortable with, but those are the best things that you can do for yourself. Go walk into a yoga class by yourself. It's going to be awkward as all get out, but then you might make a friend and you may have something new that you identify with. And I was reading something and I found this quote, and it was like, being comfortable, we like to be comfortable with our identity. And to me, that means like we want, obviously, like our identity is one of the only things that is personal. It's the only thing that we can think to ourselves is, this is how I identify as. But the only way to really find out, I think this is my personal opinion, the only way to really find out what our identity is to break out of that comfort zone and do things that you don't always do. Because if you always do something, how are you going to know if something else is better out there for you?
Right. I 100% agree with that, but I think that's a lot easier said than done. So as you know, I mean, growing up, we played soccer like every single weekend, 7 days a week. We were talking about this yesterday, how we would like play soccer, have one practice like in Connellsville, and then drive all the way to Pittsburgh for another practice. And then you get to college and it's completely different. So I feel like playing at a high level of soccer like we did, it's really hard to explore those other options, explore other things that you're interested in. And that's where soccer becomes your entire identity. I remember when I was playing at Mercyhurst after our season ended, we had a 3-month break. Like never in my life have I had 3 months off. From the time I was 6 years old until my freshman year of college, I like couldn't believe it. I was like, I'm gonna like, how am I gonna play soccer again? Like I've never gone longer than a week off, like ever.
Right.
So I think even in that 3 months, I was like, what do I do with myself? Like I don't know. So I think just changing, like if your parents listening to this, young athletes, exploring other things that you're interested in. I was listening to the episode that you did with Jason Cutney, and it was really interesting to hear his perspective on the one player that he had that missed to go be in a musical.
Yep.
And just hearing from a coach's perspective that it was really eye-opening, because I remember when we would miss practice for whatever reason, like school musicals, like track, we would always feel like we were going to be punished. Right. Or when we'd come back to soccer, like we just weren't going to get the playing time, or for whatever reason, I felt like we always prioritized soccer. But hearing Jason talk about how being in that musical was going to make that person grow more than they ever will by coming to that one soccer practice made me realize like this needs to be a conversation with coaches, with parents, that they need to have with these young players, so they don't wrap up their identity in their singular sport. So when that sport is gone, whether that be injury or whatever, that they're not experiencing this identity crisis that a lot of athletes face.
Right. And I think too, one of the biggest factors that go into our identity is how we think other people are going to perceive it. And, you know, when we're younger, I think obviously we can't pay and take ourselves to things. So like we need our parents to support us. We need, you know, our guardians to drive us places, to do things for us. So our identity is kind of shaped on its own. But when we get older, and let's say we're in college, like if you have to miss practice for something else you're interested in, like let's say like if you have to miss for something, it's not always okay. Like sometimes it doesn't go over well. So we don't have a choice to branch out. And there's that barrier of, you know, your coach's perspective on you. Like if you miss this, you're sitting out the next game. And like, how are we expected to grow? And I think that's one of the things that, you know, if I would have gone to like a D2 or D3 school for my entire undergrad, I feel like there's a lot more opportunities to do other things and not have as strict as of a schedule for athletics.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know my experience at Mercyhurst, I was involved in student government, and I was able to miss practice for student government and some other like soccer events that we had, whether that be like mandatory team bonding or whatever, film sessions. My coach was always super understanding of that, where I could see like Division I, you might not get that opportunity and they might not be as understanding.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about the proper goodbye, because you mentioned how you didn't know it was your last game and it was your last game. So what would you have done differently?
What would I have done differently? I felt like you go through a grieving process.
It's like someone died.
Yeah.
It
Like
is.
you
Like
you grieve your sport.
Right.
And I never really had that. And even like now, sometimes I'm like, I should play, or I should do this, or like whatever. And it's like, it still like doesn't feel real. Like in my head, I'm still an athlete, even though I'm not by any means an athlete anymore.
Right.
um, so I think I just never got the proper time to um, really like take a step back and reflect on my soccer career. Like I said, I thought I was playing up until literally like the week before preseason started, which was the week before um, physical therapy school started. Um, so I think even like starting school, like I was training up until that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first time I really stopped training like a soccer player was when I started school, and that was really tough for me.
When I think of a proper goodbye, you know, one of the examples is like a senior night. That's, I think, like senior night should be such a overflowing joy day. Like it should be celebrated. Like the schools who don't do like a big hurrah, like you need to do a big hurrah because it's an accomplishment.
Right.
And I think that that last game, whether it's like a self party or like if you guys are celebrating each other, like you have to celebrate it, because the more that we can celebrate ourselves, and I hate the culture of like, if you say anything positive about yourself, you're cocky. Like I feel like that's a lot of like social media culture today, but it is such an accomplishment to say goodbye to a sport that you have loved and done your whole life. Even if you're like a dual sport athlete and you have to say goodbye to one, like it is such an accomplishment to say that you did something, because like sports aren't hard. College sports especially, they're not easy. I meant to say they're not easy. I said they're not hard. But so I think like one of the tangible ways to have that proper goodbye is to celebrate it to your full ability. And like if you're on the field, at your last game, like give it everything you have, because you're gonna look back one day and you're gonna, I should have ran harder. I should have shot that ball when I passed it. Like you're gonna look back and regret not having those moments and really celebrating yourself.
It's funny because I remember like this day, like it was yesterday. I remember we were playing soccer. We're at the Riverhound Stadium in downtown Pittsburgh. Jason Cutney pulls us aside and he's like, you guys are going to miss this. Like one day, like you guys are going to look back and you're going to miss this. And I'm like, okay, that day's like not coming. And now like here we are talking about this. And I feel like that was yesterday. Like I can still remember it in my mind. So I think that's pretty crazy. Going back to your question, what would I have done differently? So my last game, playoff game, first round of playoffs, we lost. Still salty about it. But I remember I walked off the field and I didn't have a single person there. And I think that was the hardest part.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this isn't real. Like this can't be it. I mean, you've been with me where we've won like huge championships where your whole family's there, and it's just like awesome. And I think in my mind, when you think of your last game, that's what you think of.
It's
But in
it's a
reality, that's
championship.
not
It's a championship to you. It's something
right.
like you've worked for your whole life.
Right. And I think just managing those expectations, and just realizing like, okay, that's not realistic. Like understanding that your last soccer game could be like the worst game of your life, but at the end of the day, like that's your last game. So you have to leave it all on the field. Obviously, I was in a very different situation my last year. My dad was in that car accident, as we discussed. So there were obviously reasons why no one was at that game. But for me, I just remember like walking off the field and it was just like heartbreaking. I was like, this can't be it. Like, I have to play again. Like, I have to play another season. But unfortunately, I just had to make a hard decision and do what was best for me.
I I always have thought that it was easier for an athlete to say goodbye just when the clock was up versus having to say goodbye from an injury. I always just kind of had that mentality, but I just think they're different. When you're injured and it's a career-ending injury and you just physically can't play again, that's hard in its own way. But at least there's a legitimate like body ending reason that you're done playing. But then when it comes to like time's up, it's just hard to say goodbye because you're like, I can still play, I can still do this, I feel
Right.
okay. So it's harder to push it away because you can still do it. It's over. It's just over.
Right. And for me, making that decision, so in case you don't know, Mercyhurst and Gannon are huge rivals in the Erie area. So it was like I was like treading on enemy territory, talking to my coach about transferring to literally our biggest rivalry. But I remember talking to my mentor, Sue Sweeney. She is assistant athletic director at Mercyhurst. She played a huge role in my rehab after my hip surgery. And I remember I went to her and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, here are my options. And she was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. And she was just like, who are you outside of soccer? Like, she was like, I don't think you want to play soccer. She said, I just don't know if you know who you are without soccer. And it like made me really think. I was like, you're right. Like, I was only going to continue playing soccer because that's all I've ever known.
Yep.
Like, that was my identity. Like, I remember thinking, if I don't play my fourth year, when I have a year of eligibility, everyone's going to think that I'm a quitter, or everyone's going to judge me. But in reality, I didn't know who I was without soccer. And I think she made me realize that. And it was a very important conversation that she had with me that really opened my eyes and changed my perspective.
I think that's so important because I know that personally, so many people I've talked to, they're like, I'm not enjoying soccer or whatever sport. I'm not enjoying my sport. I'm not having fun. I dread going, but I do it because it's all I know.
Right.
And that's a crappy mentality to have. That's not fair to that person.
Right.
You know, like life is short. You need to do things that you genuinely enjoy. And the only way to figure out what you enjoy is to leave those things that don't make you happy anymore and figure out what it is that does make you tick.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, I'm so curious your thoughts on this. I think I've talked about this in an episode with someone before, but I don't know, it's like one of the biggest conflicts I think I have with the whole identity is I get so freaking jealous of people who are still playing. And it makes it really hard to be excited and like cheer on a team, watch soccer. It makes it hard for me to like genuinely still enjoy being like a viewer of the sport because I'm just so jealous that it's gone for me.
I think we talked about this in our last podcast together. And I don't feel that way. And I feel like it's
How?
because I'm done with soccer and you're not. Like, I think that's how you know that you're not done. Like, I go to some of the Mercyhurst games and I'm like so proud of the girls. I'm like, you guys are killing it. Like, you guys are doing great. They won PSACs last year. And this was the first time that Mercyhurst has won PSACs in 8 years. My class, like we never had that opportunity to do that. And just seeing the next class, like I wasn't jealous. I wasn't
I think
envious.
you're right. That's a good indicator that like
Right. I was just
you're
so
okay with
proud
it.
of them. And I was like, just like, I don't know how to describe it. I was just really proud of them and was really supportive. And I was like really one of their biggest cheerleaders. Just kept like, I would always check their stats. And I think that's how you kind of know, like I was completely content and like genuinely happy. Whereas if I would have been jealous, then I feel like that's when I would have known like I'm not ready to give up that sport.
That's that's a good perspective. I think that's probably pretty accurate because like obviously like I'm so happy. Like I love watching the people I love achieve their dreams. Um, but sometimes it's just like I think especially with my injury being the reason that I couldn't play, it's really hard for me sometimes. And it's it's definitely a growing process. Like, you know, whenever something hard happens in our lives, we want to blame something. We don't want to internalize it. We want to push it on someone else, blame an external force. And that's what I did for the majority of my injury. And now that I'm like growing up and I'm realizing that I have to own it and I have to, live it as my truth, it's a hard process. And I can't blame other people because they didn't get hurt, you know?
Right. And I think also the reason why we have different perspectives on this is also my college career was a lot different than yours. Like you said, you really didn't get a fair chance. You didn't get to play much, whereas I got to play relatively healthy. My surgery was after the fall season, like a month after season ended, and I was able to come back that very next fall. So I only really missed the spring season. So I think that also has a lot to do with it as well.
That's kind of what I was thinking is, you know, for me, and I'm sure someone who had like a career-ending injury, if that's what you want to call it, it's you get mad because you say, why didn't that person get hurt? Why didn't it happen to that person who's the star? And it's not a healthy way to think about it. It's the realistic way to think about it. That's how I guarantee most people think about it. No one's going to be like, yay, I was happy it was me, not you that got hurt. But at the end of the day, like I always preach on here, like you're dealt cards, you have to handle them. You're either going to get through it and you're going to be stronger or you're not. And like it's a really hard pill to swallow. But when it comes to like your identity, it's one of those pills like I now identify as someone who went through something really hard and got through it stronger. That's like now a part of my identity now that, you know, a soccer player wasn't for the last year. I identify as someone who faced adversity and kicked its ass. So it's all about your own perspective and how you handle things.
Am I like your worst? Am I like your worst person to have on?
No.
Because I
Why?
feel like I just like stare at you and don't know what to say. Like I feel like
No, that's okay. I'm like,
I
I
feel like you need to edit a lot with me.
fun. I appreciate like because when I come on here, like I could have done this as a solo episode. You know, I could have came
Right.
on here and talked about coming back and playing soccer. I could have done it as a solo episode. But I value your opinion and I value your perspective on things. That's why, yeah, you might be staring at me. I'm not editing this out because this is important. I think like this hasn't been easy for me. Like this whole process, like from day one of getting hurt to thinking soccer was over to now making the decision, the financial burden this has been on me and Nick to be in Boston. Like I'm starting to cry because this has been really freaking tough. And to know that like you support me and to hear your perspective on the same thing that you went through, it's important. And like, yeah, we might have moments where we don't agree on things or we may think that the other one's crazy, but like I think it's so important to be able to talk to someone and have them hear you out. Like as I get older, I value conversation with people so much more. Like I feel
Right.
like growing up I just blew people off or maybe I just told people what they wanted to hear, and like that's why I love doing this is because I get to genuinely hear people out and give them a voice.
Right. I just think it's funny that every time we do an episode together, like we both just end up crying.
I know.
But it's fine. No, but I definitely agree with everything that you said. It's just been really cool seeing like how much you've grown in the face of adversity. Just like thinking about high school Bailey. I know you always like reference high school Bailey.
People don't get it though.
And
They
I
don't
feel
know.
bad for the listeners because they really don't know.
They don't know.
But
Oh,
I just remember like high school Bailey. Um, Even like high school Kenzie. Like we'll just reference both of us together. Um, I feel like we always looked down on Division 3, even Division 2. And I remember when this is an important conversation. I remember that when I committed Division 2, I felt like the biggest failure.
I know you did. And I watched that be
And
hard for you.
like to the point that when I got to Mercyhurst, I wasn't playing like myself because I already felt like I failed.
Oh, I'm excited. Let's get into
Before
this. Let's get into this.
before I even stepped on the field, I was like, I'm not good enough. People are judging me. Like if I'm not the best at the Division 2 level, then I'm a nobody
Yep.
because everyone went Division 1 except for me. And I'm just like in my head, that was really hard for me. And I mean, I shouldn't sell myself short. I did have a couple Division 1 offers. But ultimately I made my decision because I knew I wanted to go into physical therapy. And I knew Mercier's had a 3+3 program with Gannon. With that being said, when I got to Mercier's, this program was not established. So I had to establish this program on my own. I took 18 credits every year. My senior year, I took 21 credits. I knew what I wanted. And I think ultimately, like, God had a plan for me and I was exactly where I needed to be. But I just remember Mercier's was literally my last option. Like, I remember when I verbally committed, I cried because I was just
I literally remember this. I remember when you tweeted, you were like, I'm embarrassed. Like, I feel like people are going to think I suck at soccer.
I remember I texted you. Like, I remember verbally committing and I just cried because I was like, I'm so disappointed in myself. Like, I feel like I let my coaches down. I feel like I've let everyone around me down because I feel like everyone just had high expectations of me. But like I said, at the end of the day, I made that decision based on what was best for me. And I ended up going to Mercier's and I absolutely loved it. Like, I had one of the best experiences of my life. Like, not even looking at the soccer aspect. But I grew so much there as a person. And it ultimately led me to here I am, second year PT school, almost done. So it's just crazy how, like, here we are, like, life just comes full circle. Like, here we are, and now you're going to be playing Division 3 soccer.
Okay, I have thoughts. So first and foremost, this is a hot take. I feel like I enjoy talking about things that people are like, oh my God, no one says that out loud.
Right.
D1 is a status. It is something that you like to put in your bio. Think about it. When we interview someone and they say, do they say I'm a D3 athlete? No, they'll just say I'm a student athlete. But if they're a D1 athlete, you best believe they're saying I'm a D1 athlete. And I think, especially growing up with social media, having that tweet, that moment saying, so blessed to go and continue my Division 1 academic and athletic career. No one ever says continue my Division 3. They just say continue my soccer career. And I think that that's okay. Like, whatever. Hey, someone who played D1 soccer, I loved putting that places. I loved putting in my bio Notre Dame soccer because it looked really good. I didn't play. Yes, it was mostly because of my injury, but I still didn't play. And I think that it's so important to acknowledge that for people who are going through the recruiting process, people who are looking like, oh, I want to go to D1 because of status, like, I want to go so I can put it in my bio. If it's not what you truly want, it's not worth it. I had the most amazing freaking time at Notre Dame, and it was the right fit for me. Academically, athletically, it was what ended up being the best fit for me. But someone who thinks that they should just go and maybe sit the bench because maybe they're not the best athlete, maybe D2, they would be the star athlete on their team. It's not worth it. I promise you, it's not worth it. Like, okay, cool. You're getting more gear. You're getting your picture somewhere in the newspaper. But other than that, is it worth your happiness? Like, probably not.
Like, disclaimer, like, where you play soccer, what division you go, once you graduate, it's just a resume builder. Like, that's it. Like, it is just a resume builder. It's cool to bring up maybe in like a job interview.
I'm working at Home Goods right now, guys. Like, I assure you, it does not matter.
But at the end of the day, that's it. And I remember that was really hard for me. Like, I didn't accept it. And I remember, like, I just had a really bad attitude coming in to Mercyhurst. Like I said, I felt like I failed before I even got there. And I wasn't even the star at Division 2. Like, not even close. And I think that it was just hard for me because not only was I like already feeling like a failure, like I let everyone down, like I wasn't really lighting the world on fire. Like, don't get me wrong, like I got playing time. I started a lot my freshman year. But like my senior year or my third year, I think I started like 3 games and that's it.
You're saying that like you thought, okay, this kind of sucks. I'm going to D2, but I'm going to go to D2.
But I'm going to play.
Best player. And
not necessarily like the best player.
You were going to play.
I'm going to play. And I remember like my first or second week at Mercier's, we used to have these team meetings where we would have to set goals for the year. And I remember I want to be like athlete of the week, or like, I don't know, freshman of the year. Like, not even close. Like, I barely played. Like, I started a few games, I got some minutes here and there, but like, what was I thinking? Like, I don't know.
No, it's interesting because I love talking about this because honestly, it is something that, one, I don't think people like to admit. Like, it's
Right. I
hard to
feel
like
like,
shit on yourself, kind of. It's hard to admit, but it needs to be talked about for people who are going into that.
right. I feel like this is the stuff that like no one talks about, but everyone like
Thinks.
might go through, thinks about. Like, I'm an open book.
I think too, like, one of the other things that like kind of crushes your identity is when your efforts or hard work doesn't get
Recognized.
recognized. Like, let's say, for example, like ACC players of the week. If you're never one of those people, it's like, I don't know, that's an extreme because that's a really hard one to get.
No,
But
I
you
get
know,
what you're saying. Like watching your teammates get player of the week or like freshman of the year, knowing that like you played right beside them.
yep.
Like, you might have contributed to their success, but you're just like a player on their team. But I do think like my injury really helped me to grow as a player, and it really changed my attitude and perspective. Like, I just remember during one of my exit meetings with my coach, this is actually really funny. So he put me in with like 3 minutes left in the game. And he did that like a few times. But I remember he looked at me and he was like, I put you in with 3 minutes left. Like, the only minutes I got were 3 minutes left in a game. And he said, if I would have done that to you like sophomore year, freshman year, he said, you would have looked at me and basically told me to like F off. He was like, but my last year, senior year, he was like, I asked you to go in 3 minutes left in the game, and you nodded your head and said, what do you need me to do? Like,
Right.
you were your complete attitude change. And that was something that really resonated with me. So I think it's just important, like, and this is another thing that I wanted to talk about, but I feel like athletes base a lot of their success on minutes or playing time.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was I was trying to find research studies, which I thought it would be really interesting to see if there was any correlation between like depression in athletes and minutes.
Minutes.
And I think that it took me until my last year. Like, I was so caught up in that. Like, I was so caught up, like, okay, I'm Division II. Okay, what are my stats? Like, I feel like people from back home are like checking up on me, looking at my stats. So I was just like very caught up in that, more so than just being a good teammate. And I think my injury really helped me to, take a step back and like, how can I contribute now in a different role? Whether that's like helping with practice, like if that's setting up the cones, like in practice, or if that's cheering on my players from the sidelines because I couldn't play, or coming to lift and encouraging them. Like, even simple things like that, just changing your role, I think is just really important.
100%. This is something too that now that I'm going to be playing D3, I've been thinking about is athletes who, so let's say soccer is just like obviously the relative term for us here. So I'm going to say soccer, but like growing up, we all play the same amount of soccer. Like, if you have aspirations to go and play college soccer, your parents are putting you in like a club team, and you're probably doing high school if you're allowed to do high school and club at the same time. And we all put in the same amount of effort. So whether you're the best player on the team or on the lower end of the team, you're all going to practice. You're all putting in 100% effort. And I think to me, like, I always thought like, oh, I'm going D1. I must be putting in the most effort. I must be putting in the most time. And it's a really humbling experience to realize like, no, these girls going D3 and D2 are putting in equally as much time and effort. That was something that I really had to like wrap my head around when I was, making this transition, because just because it's not the same level, that doesn't mean that they haven't been playing soccer their whole life. That doesn't mean that soccer is not an important aspect of their lives. It doesn't mean that they don't love it and put as much effort into it. It just means that they're at a different place. Literally, that's all it means. But I always thought that, like, I love soccer more. I'm in a big D1 school. Soccer's my life, so it can't be your life.
Like, no, I feel like at the end of the day, it's like, I'm D1, you're D2 or D3, like I'm better than you.
Yep.
And I think that that's not the case. Like by any means, that is not the case.
There's D3 and D2s that are way better than some D1s.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that that's just like a really important point to point out. Like for anyone going through the recruiting process, do not get caught up in the divisions. Like if you had to make a decision and you take away the fact that this school's D1, D2, D3, make your decision on that. Like what you're interested in, like location, like there's so much more to consider than just the division status. And I think that that is something that we like didn't understand back then.
No.
But I just think it's really interesting seeing like you playing Division 3. Like, I don't know, like, I think it just says like how much we've grown since that point.
You're so right.
And you're Bailey, like thrilled. Like Old Bailey would be like,
I would have laughed.
Never. Like never. And I feel like I'm thrilled for you. And you are genuinely happy. And I feel like you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
If I was I committed sophomore year to Notre Dame. If sophomore year Bailey was told, this is the school you're going to, it's a D3 university, I would have said, I'd rather stop playing soccer. I genuinely would have said
100%.
No, I'm not going. And yeah, I mean, we all know that I have changed from my injury. So literally shout out my injury, because I just like, I don't know. It's so crazy to me. I think it's crazy for people who knew me before. Like also people who knew me before, like in high school and things. Please listen to some of my episodes. Like I think it's crazy. Like I hope I can be an example for people that you can like be a better person. You can change, because I feel like, I don't know, like I'm proud of myself. And it's not easy to say you're proud of yourself, but I'm freaking proud of myself. Cause like one, like we've talked about, I've changed so much. And two, like this is a decision I would have never made before.
Right. Well, I'm proud of you too. But I think the reason that you are able to, I guess, have this big change and like be real and be who you are and just come on and make a podcast and talk about the vulnerable things and talk about the hard things is because you now understand that there's more to life than soccer. Mm-hmm. And I think just listening to your podcast, it's going to be so cool to see you play again with all the knowledge that you have and the growth that you've made. I think it's going to be awesome for you.
I mean, it's not about playing soccer at this point. I mean, it's exciting that I get to play the game that I've loved my whole life, but it's about, showing that, people change, people grow. I can enjoy it and you don't have to put pressure on yourself if you make a mistake. You don't have to, be mad for the rest of the week if you don't score a goal in that game. Those are things that I used to care about. If I didn't score, if we won and I didn't score, I was mad. I wasn't happy for my team. If we won and I only played 70 out of the 90 minutes, I was mad because there was 20 minutes that someone thought I couldn't play. Those are things that aren't going to happen anymore. It's more about like doing something fun, something I love, smiling, those things that I could have cared less about when I was younger.
Right. Or getting in the game in the last 3 minutes.
No, I'd still be mad, but
no, but honestly, like I was to the point where like growth is not playing, but being genuinely happy for your team when they win.
Yep, I agree.
Like I think that says so much about who you are as an athlete.
Yep. And some people I feel like maybe naturally have that. Like some people growing up are just a team player,
Right. And I'm not saying like not to care about your playing time or your minutes.
No, of course not.
By any means, but like it's important to like take a step back and just like enjoy the moment, enjoy the people you're surrounded with. Like, don't get caught up in all the pettiness, don't get caught up in the stats or the playing time. Like, just genuinely enjoy being on a team, being surrounded by people who care about you, who are going to lift you up when you're down. But yeah.
I wanted to put in here, I think it's hilarious. So the title of this episode, I'm making it like, do soccer players even wear pre-wrap anymore? And do you remember? So when we were growing up, like pre-wrap was the thing. If you didn't have like 6 different colors of pre-wrap in your bag and you broke them out before practice and decided which one you were going to wear, like you just weren't cool. Like you just didn't have it together. Also, we did this thing where we would, on our way to practice, we would pin our tie our pre-wrap to the front of the car and then braid 3 colors of pre-wrap. So then we wear that as our headband. But me and Kenzie were at the gym last week and she had pre-wrap on. And she's like, does this look okay? Like, do people, athletes, soccer players even wear pre-wrap anymore? And I'm like, I actually have no idea. Like, I think we're so out of touch with it. So I think it's funny.
Yeah. So I was cleaning out my closet. I was home for Easter break and I was cleaning out my closet and I found a roll of pre-wrap. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm putting this on my head. Meanwhile, I use pre-wrap like in physical therapy school. Like we use it all the time.
Right.
But I think it was just cool that I literally just found it. So I put it on, like Bailey said, I came to the gym and I was like, do athletes still wear pre-wrap? Like, I genuinely don't know.
I have no idea.
Like I never did in college, but I'm like, I don't know. Like, so yeah, let us know.
Yeah, your pre-wrap, let us know. What's your fave color? It's like, it's so weird when you're just not in that like community anymore. You're not going to Riverhounds and seeing everyone, or you're not going to your club team and you're seeing all your friends and like getting the scoop and hearing everyone's drama from the other school they go to. It just, life is weird.
It is.
All right, guys. So this is going to be a 2-part episode. Kenzie and I we're talking way too much. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed my little announcement. I'm so excited to get back on the field, play soccer again. So yeah, thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you guys next week with Kenzie again for part 2.